give it up for Opal Staples, one of Reverend Jackson's favorite singers, Opal Staples. I was told that I didn't introduce myself when the service started. I just got up and started talking. So my name is Reverend James Meeks. And for 38 years, I pastored the House of Hope, the Salem Baptist Church of Chicago. Quick little story, 25 years ago when we were building, Jonathan, this building, I drove in one night, I had Reverend in the car, I had Reverend with me. About 25 years ago, we had, the roof was up, the walls were up, but we didn't have everything inside. And I drove in here one night about 9 o'clock at night. It was dark, it was muddy, it was dingy. And Reverend Jackson got out of the car. He stood and looked around, and he looked at me and said, "My funeral's gonna be at this building." He told me that. So that's who I am. They told me to introduce myself. And they told me to introduce the other guy who keeps jumping up here, who's up here with me. I want Governor Gavin Newsom to know, since he went off about how great our governor is, he lives in California. Pastor Charles Jenkins, who pastored the Fellowship Baptist Church over 25 years, where the chairman of the board of Rainbow Push, the Reverend Clay Evans, was the founder and the pastor. And we are so happy to be doing this together. All right, now we have expressions from Jim Reynolds, Chairman, CEO of Loop Capital, C.K. Hoffler, she's the chairman of the board of Rainbow Push, Thomas Ricketts, who is the president of the Chicago Cubs. Anybody need to pray for the Cubs? And Isaiah Thomas. They will come in that order. Come on, give it up.
Thank you all. It's wonderful to be with you. I usually speak a lot, but I generally speak at finance conferences talking about stocks and bonds, and I never speak behind speakers like this. I tapped Isaiah on the shoulders and I said, "Isaiah, we in trouble." And he comforted me by saying, "Jim, we ain't got a shot." So I said, all right. Family, the Jackson family, kind of like my own family, as we've been close these last 30 years, as I really became very close with your dad, obviously. My sincerest condolences to you all and to everybody here in Chicago. They got to know this great man. You know, the country preacher was one of a kind. Now, I showed this speech to my wife this morning as I was shaving, and she said, "You know, you can't call him a country preacher." I said, "Sandy, he called himself the country preacher." And Pastor Jenkins bailed me out by saying the country preacher. As I was asked to speak, I asked the family, what should I speak about? Now, everybody knows me, and they know Jim Reynolds only knows one thing: finance. That's it. And so I said, let's talk about the businesses that he built and the impact that he had on Wall Street. The impact that he had on corporate America, and how he changed the economic landscape for all of us here that enter this business. I met Reverend Jackson in 1997, the year I started my firm, and the same year he started the Wall Street Project. I had a chance to see and be a part of many of the things that he built and many of the people that he influenced. For whatever the reason, he liked having me around all the time. We traveled to Africa together. We traveled to Europe together. We traveled to the Middle East together. And he did one thing that whole time, just one thing the whole time. He fought for other people. That's all he did. I knew from a young fella about his Operation Breadbasket, and I knew intuitively that when blacks went in these grocery stores to shop, they wasn't really working there. And if they were working in back in those days, A&P and those places, they certainly didn't have jobs that they could move up in. And he raised that issue and raised it with the power that he had, which was the power of the people, to change it, and he did. Then he went on to do a few things, but he tackled Wall Street, of all things. And I went with him to tackle Wall Street. One of the reasons that I'm standing here and have the business that I have today is because he tackled Wall Street. And many of us here is because he tackled Wall Street. He challenged pension funds and the banks and the corporations that really wouldn't hire us to do anything. We couldn't do a bond deal. We couldn't do a stock deal. We couldn't do a M&A transaction. We couldn't do anything until a man who was, and we all Harvard, Northwestern, MBAs, and a man who had no financial training whatsoever changed the whole thing for blacks in the financial landscape. Then he called me one day. He said, Jim, give me $5,000 or $10,000. I said, why do you need $5,000 or $10,000? He said, I'm going to buy some shares of stock. You just going to buy a few shares of stock? What is that going to do? That's going to get me inside of the corporate boardrooms to talk, because I'm a shareholder, and I can attend shareholder meetings. And he attended those shareholder meetings and raised the issues of why are you corporations boycotting black people? And why are you boycotting black financial firms and other firms? He changed the landscape. And then he did it again when he was the first person, the first human being to ask the question, why aren't there any blacks on the corporate boards? Now, a lot of people say they do it now, but he did it then. And I met a lot of people that got on corporate boards and that said, you know, Reverend Jackson didn't really have anything to do with me on a corporate board because I'm qualified and I have particular expertise in the subject matter. I said, well, you had expertise in the subject matter for a long time, but you didn't get invited on any corporate boards until Reverend Jackson said, put him on corporate board. I've seen Reverend Jackson fight in meetings for contractors, for entrepreneurs, folks that didn't have much, and he got nothing out of it. And he fought like it was his, for his family, and it was just for others. The legacy of Reverend Jackson that he leaves behind, in my view, will forever be unmatched by anyone. A man that did so much for so many and never asked once for anything for himself. Not once. Reverend Jackson, from my world that I see, could have made millions of dollars at any point by accepting any of the many corporate boards appointments that he was offered, but he didn't. He would have made millions by just asking folks for a little piece of the fees or the businesses that they built under his influence, but he didn't. Money didn't motivate him, and I know that's a fact. Helping people did, and that's just what he was born to do. A phrase that's used a lot is one in a million, but as I think of my brother, I use one phrase, one of one. There's never going to be another one like the country preacher. Thank you.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue ici à la célébration du révérend Jesse-Jackson à Chicago. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to make sure y'all were paying attention. To the incomparable, fantastic, fabulous, magnificent mother of the movement, Dr. Jacqueline Jackson. Get on your feet and recognize her, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. To the entire Jackson family, talented Santita Jackson, Congressman Jesse Lewis Jackson, soon to be Congressman again, Jesse Lewis Jackson. Congressman Jonathan Jackson, our president and CEO of Rainbow Push and everything, Yusef Dubois Jackson. Dr. Jacqueline Jackson, Little Jackie, but Dr. Jacqueline Jackson as well. Brilliant, and to the very talented Ashley Jackson. We say to you today that we thank you. We thank you for sharing your father, your husband, with the world each and every day, because it is because of you that he had the courage, the energy, and the inspiration to do what he did. And to our mother again of the movement, we thank you. We thank you. So, to our presidents, my. To President and Dr. Biden, to President Barack Obama. And we're going to recognize Michelle Obama as well. To President Bill Clinton and Secretary Clinton. Yes, yes. And to Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, we want to thank you. Thank you for all that you did. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your solidarity, continued solidarity with Reverend Jackson, Rainbow Push, Citizenship Education Fund, Push Excel. And Reverend Jackson, yes, I was his lawyer for 38 years. I am 37 years old, you see. And I want you all to know, for those of you who don't know, that Reverend Jackson, like Dr. King and those giants before him, understood the synergy between activism, freedom fighting, and the law. He understood that. You had to have lawyers behind you, not all in front of you, behind you. Because what do lawyers do? You protect. You get people, if you have to, out of jail. You help to get permits. You organize. You are behind the great iconic leaders. And just as Dr. King had Thurgood Marshall, the incomparable Constance Baker Motley Charles Hamilton Houston, and all of those magnificent jurists, Reverend Jackson had a legal team. John Bustamante, Willie Gary, my mentor, Johnny Cochran. You see, all of these people and more. I think I saw Cleo Fields in the audience. Janice Mathis. I could go on and on and on. He understood the significance and supported lawyers. Barbara Arnwine, Darrell Jones. And I say that because the National Bar Association, I'm a past president, we celebrated 100 years recently. 55 of those years, Reverend Jackson was our inspiration. We can trace Reverend Jackson's role with the National Bar in the building and development of our organization back to Senator Arthenia Joyner, who's in the audience, who was also his representative in Tampa, Florida, by the way, in 1984 and 1988. We had presidents like Lawrence Bozay. We had presidents like Julius Williams, who, when they didn't want to put him on the ballot in New Jersey, he was his lawyer. And then, of course, for 38 years, I have, along with others, been his lawyer. And I want to tell you the first time that I met Reverend Jackson. So in 1988, I met him maybe before with groups of people, but in 1988, Reverend Jackson was the most popular person in the world. As my kids used to say, in the whole entire world. Everybody wanted to talk to him. And the president of a small Central African country, Gabon, Youssef, you remember this, President Bongo said, we would like him to come to the continent. And that is just when we had changed from becoming black or Afro-American to African-American. And so Reverend Jackson, we negotiated this, and I was a baby lawyer my first year out of law school. And we negotiated Reverend coming to Gabon with a team. And Reverend, you know, back in the day when he landed, there would be a press conference. And there were thousands of people there to greet him, to welcome him back to the motherland. Some of you are nodding in the audience because you were on that trip. And when Reverend got off the plane, they had like 4 or 5 translators for him because, you know, this was the Reverend Jesse-Jackson. And he got off the plane and he started talking, and the translators were looking, you know, like, oh my God, what is he just saying? And they could not quite translate the essence of Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson. And so the translation in the first 15 seconds was not right. And as a baby lawyer, one thing I knew was that we weren't going to let history go down in that way. So I stepped in and I translated for Reverend Jackson. And he said, say that, say it, but say it. That's just what she said. And that was in 1988, and a one-time assignment that I thought would last at the end of that trip became a 38-year journey where I've had the pleasure of, thank you, I've had the pleasure of working with the incomparable mother of our movement, his daughter Santita, his son Jesse, his son Jonathan, his son Yusuf, his daughter Jacqueline, and his daughter Ashley. That is why I am here today to say, ladies and gentlemen, he is a global icon. And so as I close, because Yusuf is giving me that look, I'm going to close by saying this. A luta continua. Vittoria è certa. La lutte continue. Mais la victoire est certaine. I say that to the grandkids, you know what I'm saying. And translated into English and to our new president and CEO, you must hear me and hear me clearly. The struggle continues. But with your magnificent leadership and support of the Rainbow Push family, CEF family, Push XL family, Push family, and all of the magnificent volunteers and people who stand by you. Victory is certain.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, I was sitting here a little bit ago thinking, I grew up Catholic. I've never been to a funeral like this. But then I don't feel so bad anymore because I don't think anyone's ever been to a funeral like this. So on behalf of myself and my family, including my sister Laura, who is here today with us, and everyone from our organization, I want to express my heartfelt condolences to the Jackson family and everyone here who knew and loved Reverend Jackson. It was a great honor of mine to get to know Reverend Jackson over the past 17 years, and he was a man I truly admired and respected. When I first met the Reverend, though, I have to admit, I was a little nervous. Everything I knew about him is something that I had read in the paper or maybe seen on TV. And, his leadership and his leadership in civil rights and human rights and everything he'd done, Operation Push, everything he had done. And I knew all about that, but I'd never met the man. But knowing Jesse Jackson, the public figure, does not fully prepare you to meet Jesse Jackson, the person. In public, in pursuit of greater goals, he was bold and outspoken and defiant. But in person, he was also warm and friendly. And as many of you know in this room, he had a great sense of humor, and we laughed a lot. Now, I think a good man can speak to a large crowd and perhaps inspire the masses. But a great man can also speak to you like you were the only person in the world. And Jesse Jackson was that kind of man. Of course, I personally like to believe that all great people love baseball. I'm not really sure if that's true, but the Reverend did. In fact, he was a pretty good baseball player. He turned down the opportunity to play professional baseball to go to college to play football. And like many truly great people, he was a family man. He loved his family and was an especially doting grandfather. I saw this firsthand, as I know how much he loved to bring his family, his children, and his grandchildren to the ballpark. Tellingly, Reverend Jackson never asked to be in a suite. He always wanted to sit in the seats with the fans, even on his last few visits where his health challenges were mounting. All he ever asked for was a hot dog, a soda, and a Cubs win. And on most days, we could deliver all three of those. And while I know the Reverend loved to come to the ballpark because it was a place to be with his family, he also respected the history of Wrigley Field and knew that it is the only Major League ballpark still standing where Jackie Robinson actually played a game. Now, and of course, that's the same Jackie Robinson that Reverend Jackson so beautifully eulogized over 50 years ago. On that day in 1972, he compared the life of Jackie Robinson to a, quote, a rock in the water, creating concentric circles and ripples of new opportunities. It occurs to me that one could say the same about the life of Reverend Jackson. He was just one big rock in the water, and he made so many ripples. Thank you.
I'm used to working with a 24-second shot clock, so I will try to extend a couple of more minutes longer. First, I want to honor the Chicago's first royal family, the Jackson family. Mama Jackson, children, grandchildren, all that you have stood for in Chicago, the home that you made in a place of peace and safety that you gave our leader, our Chicago Nelson Mandela. Thank you. I also like to honor the 5 presidents who are sitting here today. President Harris, President Clinton, President Bill Clinton, First Lady Jill Biden, President Biden, and Chicago's own South Side, President Barack Obama. Now I got to set the stage because a lot of us in here are a little older than some of the generation below us. So I was born in 1961 on the west side of Chicago, Cook County Hospital. But for those of us who were here living during that period of time as little young men, young women, 1961 to 1971, 63 Medgar Evans was assassinated. 65 Malcolm X was assassinated. Fred Hampton assassinated, 69. Martin Luther King assassinated, 68. The Kennedy brothers assassinated. We had just come out of Jim Crow. I was the first one in my family to live outside of Jim Crow. Angela Davis was on the run. I had a free Angela Davis pen. And those of us who are sitting in this audience understood what Chicago was like. Us Chicagoans on the west side and the south side, from the 60s to the 70s, when every store was burned down. There was no place to go. There was one man, again, our Nelson Mandela at that time, stood tall. And I remember my mom and I standing in a soup line on Madison and Kedzie, one of the most humiliating times of our life. We had no food. We had moved 4 or 5 times. And this beautiful man, this legend, this hero, came walking down the street. And I, as a young boy, when society was telling me I was a nobody, when society was telling me we don't even want to go to school with you, this man walked down the street and walked up to me and my mom had marched with him before. He said hello to my mom, and then he did the unthinkable. Mama Jackson, your husband kneeled down and he looked me in my eyes. And that man said, you are somebody. At that time, I couldn't quite understand the feelings and emotions that I was having as a young kid, walking, trying to find food, looking for a place to go. But when he said, I am somebody, it resonated with me that there was a whole world trying to make me a nobody. And when he knelt down and looked me in my eye and said, you are somebody. And then he said, say it again, say, I am somebody. I am somebody. I am somebody. I looked up, my mom is crying. She's proud. But we couldn't get out of the soup line, right, Jonathan? We lose our spot. Y'all know it. You standing in that soup line, your friends walking by teasing you and everything, but you can't get out. Then he lifted me up emotionally on his shoulders, them broad shoulders that we all have stood on. Emotionally, spiritually, we all stood on that shoulder, on your family's shoulders. Then he left. And I was like, Mama, that's the man we see on TV. She's like, yeah. So for us Chicagoans, right? When Muhammad Ali said, I'm the greatest, on the national stage, that resonated to everybody. But for the kids in Louisville, Kentucky, oh, it hit different. When Nelson Mandela said in Soweto, South Africa, let my people go and free them. When he walked up and he spoke, oh, it hit different there. When Reverend Jackson said in Chicago, I am somebody, and keep hope alive, oh, for us, it's different. Years later, in one of my most triumphant moments, he's running for president, 1988. We trying to beat the Lakers. We trying to dethrone the Lakers. My father-in-law, Gordon Kendall, is head of Secret Service for the family. We get a call, midnight, 1 in the morning. Hey, I'm coming to the game. I said, how you gonna get to the game? You gotta, you running for president. People, no, I'm coming to, who just said he was the most popular man in the world in 1988? Who just said that? Was that you? 1988, he's the most popular man in the world, and he coming to my game. He shows up at the game in my most triumphant moment. We win. He walks in, and he kneels. And he says a prayer. Then he lifted me up on those big, broad shoulders again. And he left. Years later, my mother passed away. And when my mother died, all of Chicago came out, represented, showed up, and we were at our lowest moment. And Reverend Jackson walked into the church. I remember sitting there with my brothers and sisters. And it was like this man This man who's been there my whole life. When we didn't know what to say, what to do on that day. We had no words for my mama. That man walked up to the stage and said, I got this. And he sent my mama off. Beautiful words and everything else. While we were at our lowest, again, he came and he lifted us up on those broad shoulders. Fast forward, all of us will remember the day when you was elected President of the United States. And I'll never forget that day when you walked out on the stage with your family, with our First Lady, Michelle, my former teammate, played Bebe basketball with Craig. The pictures and the images, and those of you who were there, the tears that were in the audience, the long struggle. And if you can remember, the camera panned from our president to your husband, to your father, to your grandfather. And he stood there with tears in his eyes. And I know all of you remember this image. And those big, heavy, broad shoulders lifting you up, holding you high, saying, I got you. I got you. Yes, that's what Reverend Jesse L. Jackson means to us in Chicago and all royal family. So we thank you for the courage. We thank you for the faith. We thank you for believing in us. And all of us who were so devastated from the 60s and the 70s, coming out of Jim Crow, trying to make a way out of no way. When he would improvise in a poem, I am somebody, when he would say, even if I'm on welfare, I'm like, man, he talking to me. Even if I'm poor, oh, he talking to me. He had a way of connecting personally with us. So today, when he said, keep hope alive, when there was no hope for us, and all of you here from Chicago know, in the 60s, we felt like there was no hope. Hope was lost. Hope was gone. This man gave us hope, gave us life, gave us energy. And today, I want to thank all of you for showing up. And to the organizers and presenters, I would just like to say to the organizers, when you took on the challenge to bring this man home, you couldn't understand the vastness and the multitudes that he touched. So there's no way you're going to be on time. It ain't going to happen. And you know why it's not going to happen? Because all of us here, when you look around, we are from every single walk of life. Rich, poor, strong. He brought it all together. The Rainbow Coalition, thank you, appreciate you. Mama, don't you get up. I'm coming over to tell you I love you.
The man who got up 2 hours ago Talking about a 24-second shot clock. Just said that he don't honor time. What Jackson family, your heart has to be beating, just beaming to know how much we all love the Reverend. It's got to be. It's got to be. And I'm with that thing. Y'all will always be our royal family, our first family, because y'all the Jacksons, y'all royalty. Well, I get the opportunity to introduce my seatmate from the Senate, who came on to be the 44th president of the United States. Chicago, ladies and gentlemen, President Barack Obama.